Episode number 250 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. My guest today is Dr. Anshul Gupta. Dr. Gupta is a best-selling author, speaker, researcher, and a world expert in Hashimoto's disease. He educates people worldwide on reversing Hashimoto's disease, and he is a board-certified family medicine physician with advanced certification in functional medicine, peptide therapy, and also fellowship trained in integrative medicine. He has worked at the prestigious Cleveland Clinic Department of Functional Medicine alongside Dr. Mark Hyman. He has helped thousands of patients to reverse their health issues by using the concepts of functional medicine. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Gupta.
Oh, it's a pleasure being over here. You're doing an amazing work, sharing all this great information with females who need it. So I'm so glad that we are talking about this important topic of Hashimoto's and how it impacts infertility and other problems.
Absolutely. And just to kind of recap, we had talked about this before we started recording about functional medicine, how amazing it is because we've come a long way with the testing and the specifics to really narrow in on details that you wouldn't normally get if you go to like a general doctor. So before we get started, I'd love to talk about that, really what functional medicine is, how it really looks at the body, and how the body operates, all the different parts.
Absolutely. So in kind of, just one line, basically functional medicine is a root cause medicine where you figure out the root cause, of various diseases, and then we kind of improve them from an inside out approach. So it's a science system based medicine. We're looking at all different kinds of body systems, and there is science behind it. Like when we go to med school, we all learn about physiology, biochemistry of the body, and suddenly once we are practicing medicine, we forget about it. So we want to go back to that physiology, biochemistry, what exactly is going on in the body, why body is not working again, and then what we need to kind of bring that homeostasis. So that's what we do in functional medicine. So obviously when it started off, then we were just focusing on lifestyle changes, what diet is good, what supplements might be useful, how stress impacts it. But as you pointed out, slowly and slowly now we have the ability to actually test properly all different aspects of a person's life, whether there's something genetics, what's going on in the DNA, whether it is in their detox is not working good, whether they have toxin problems or they have mitochondria problems, or they have hormonal issues. So we can check for almost each and everything in a person's body and kind of get exactly where the problem is. And I think that has completely changed the trajectory of how we perceive health and how we approach diseases because our plans are much more specific now. Instead of throwing the same pill at each and every person, instead of throwing the same diet in each and every person, we can personalize it. And I think that is very important. And that's the reason we are getting so great results.
Yes, absolutely. And Hashimoto specifically is a very interesting topic. My husband actually, he's a Western medicine physician. He does emergency medicine. And I remember when I first started getting into natural medicine, I started talking to him about Hashimoto's because it was very intriguing and in the way that it also is such a huge percentage of people having issues with trying to get conceive and fertility and hormones. And he had mentioned that mostly females get it. This was kind of like when I was first starting to get into medicine. And he said, mostly females. And I said, why is that? And he said that there might be an estrogen component to it. And I wanted to get your take on that because I do find that to be very interesting as to why that is, that it impacts mostly women.
Yeah, so I mean, traditionally that was the case. Definitely middle-aged females, starting from like 25 to 65 is the most common people who will get Hashimoto's disease, around 70 to 80%. But in the last decade, we're actually seeing even younger females as soon as they hit they're like, menarche, like, menstrual cycles, they can be diagnosed with it. Even males are being diagnosed, with Hashimoto's disease. So definitely it is rising very rapidly, not only in females, but, like other genders also. Now, the question about why females are more kind of, susceptible to it. So they obviously, we don't have a complete answer for it, but we have several different answers. So I think the first answer is that, female hormonal systems are much more complicated than males, right? All that hormonal cascade and shifts which are happening every month in females, kind of puts like their body under stress. And the bigger hormonal shifts are happening once they start their menstrual cycle. Then obviously after having a pregnancy, after the delivery, we see Hashimoto's happening, or after hitting menopause, we are seeing more Hashimoto's happening. So definitely, like, that big jolts, like the female body gets, with going through all these different hormonal changes, is one reason. The second reason is that, like, females are more susceptible to toxins in our environment, because again, their bodies are fragile. They have more endocrine systems which can be affected with the toxins in our environment. So that's definitely a second important reason we are seeing it. The third reason, which your husband pointed out, is estrogen. So now we are actually living in a world which we are estrogen dominant. There are so many products, there are so many chemicals, there are so many things which are using around us, even food, that has, whether you can call them natural estrogens or xenoestrogen or phytoestrogens, but all of them are contributing towards estrogen excess. And we know that estrogen excess again leads to infertility, leads to also Hashimoto's disease.
Right. So, quick question. So many questions I have that are arising in my mind. So, yeah, we're exposed to a tons of toxins. I mean, I talk to my kids all the time about it, and my patients all the time about it, and to the point where it becomes overwhelming for sure. But at the same time, once you swallow that pill and you kind of figure it out what's really happening, you can't go back. You can't turn back. You can't unsee it. So you have to really be conscious in order to truly remove a lot of these toxins from your life and your products. My question is that there are certain people that say like that plastics or certain toxins are not, your body's not able to fully cleanse out of your body. There's certain like forever chemicals and things like that. What is your take on that? Do you think that there is a way to truly detoxify from that?
So I think what we have to understand is that, what these toxins are doing to our body, right? So we always have this detoxification system in our body, which, is responsible for removing the toxins. Now, any toxin we get exposed to, that toxin alone, unless, we get exposed to in a very toxic level, then that toxin alone can destroy our body, which generally doesn't happen, right? For most of the people, it's very, very small amount of these toxins. And over the course of years, like they accumulate in our body. And not just one toxin, multiple toxins, accumulate together. And then they actually reach the toxic level, and then they cause damage to our body. So what we have to do is that we have to work on just improving our detox system, and obviously, first of all, reducing the burden of toxins that we are getting exposed to, and then working on detoxification. Now, detox system is very complicated, and this is actually one important thing I always tell people. Just don't buy these detox bundles online or go on a detox on your own. There is a science behind it. There are several people that have come to me that have actually gotten worse just because they were just detoxifying, thinking their body has toxins. Oh, let me just detoxify it. These toxins are dangerous, right? As you said, there are some toxins which remain in our body kind of, in a dormant state, because they are deposited in our fatty tissues or in our bones or other places. So they are there, they're not doing much. But once we start the detox, if we are not properly following those detox, these toxins can come out in our blood and start doing damages. So
Right.
there are three phases of detox. All those three phases have to be properly optimized so that those toxins can leave the body. So I always tell people, do not do a proper detox on your own, because that can be harmful. But certainly you can reduce the burden of toxin that you're getting exposed to. That is a very good step to use that. But I think if you use proper detox, majority of the toxin burdens can be lowered. Now, can we reach the state where we will have no toxins in our body? Probably in this current world that we are living in, that probably is never going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think the burden or the stress of thinking about that too much can also be another toxin. So it is important just to minimize and do it in a way that's balanced, and knowing that our body is resilient and it can actually manage a lot of burdens. It's just too much burden can start causing a cascade of events that we don't want. And I know also for just to kind of mention, if people are interested, even if they're working with somebody, it's important to, if you are going to go through any kind of detox, to give yourself a nice buffer before even trying to conceive, not to do two at the same time, because that's really important as well.
Absolutely, yes. Conception again, I think in our current culture or in our environment, we don't talk about conception. We just feel that, okay, females' body are just ready, like to kind of make babies any day they want to be. And that is
Correct.
not a reality, right? We have to think about conception. We have to get our bodies ready. We have to create that environment where we not only sustain our body, but we are creating one human being. And that is a lot of effort that our body has to put in, and our bodies are not ready. So like, doing detoxification, doing this and that, all those things, and then trying to conceive, that's the reason a lot of females end up not able to conceive even though they're trying to do all the right things, is because they're not preparing their body and they're trying to do too much in their body. So I totally
Yeah.
agree with that. When you're trying to detoxification, that is not the right time for even trying to conceive. First complete the detoxification, then you get your body ready, and then kind of think about conception.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you mentioned phytoestrogens. I know that there's kind of multiple views on that. And I know that sometimes in excess estrogen, you take flax seeds, which are helpful to actually remove excess estrogen, even though it is considered a phytoestrogen. So I wanted to get your thoughts just on that and to get more clarity on this, because there are so many different perspectives. Like people say, avoid soy, but is that all soy or is fermented soy different, and that kind of thing?
So, to kind of let people know, phytoestrogens are natural estrogens which are coming from the plant sources. As you kind of mentioned, soy is definitely the one of the biggest ones that everybody knows about, and has a very good amount of phytoestrogens. A lot of menopausal women, are taking soy or used to take soy, and obviously they feel better because of that. And then obviously flax seeds and other things can also have some amount of phytoestrogens too. Now, the interesting part was that, like again, so the phytoestrogens are good when we have estrogen deficiency, right? Especially in menopausal women. But as I explained, females who are from the fertile ages, their estrogen levels are on the higher side. To actually feed more estrogen to it through phytoestrogens actually sometimes can feed the fire. And that's the reason, that can harm their body. So again, it depends on situation to situation. Now, another problem with soy is that it is such modified crop. Like
Right.
world over, majority of the soy is GMO crop, and then plus the way it is grown, it use a lot of fertilizers and pesticides. So that is
Right.
another major problem that causes leaky gut and other issues along with the phytoestrogen. That's the reason soy we don't recommend for a lot of people, especially in Hashimoto's, because that can lead to leaky gut and increase in antibody levels. So that's
Right.
the case. Now, flax seeds are good because definitely they help to rebalance your hormones. They do have very small amount of phytoestrogens, but they have other good things. They have good omega 3s. They have a lot of other lignins. They have other antioxidants that again helps your body to rebalance things. So they have other ways they can actually be helpful. So I think those are other great choices to do that. Now, fermented soy, like again, whenever you ferment anything, you break it down. Whenever you're breaking it down, like then obviously it is easier to digest and easier for your body to absorb things, does reduce some toxins in that particular food. So we have seen, traditionally, like, Japanese or Chinese cuisine, or those traditions, they use a lot of fermented soy products like miso soup and tempeh and other things. And, obviously they have seen great success with it. So I think in small quantities, fermented soy products are okay. And again, it depends on person to person. I have seen in some people, even with fermented soy, their antibody levels will go up high. While for other people, like that can be helpful. So I always say people just try it out, see how your body reacts. And that's where again the personalized medicine comes into place. Because for everyone, the same food might not be the best, or it might not be the worst also.
Right. And I know with a lot of autoimmune conditions, that's another really fascinating topic of what causes your immunity to get into this heightened state to the point where it's attacking your own tissue. And a lot of ideas is that it all starts with the gut. The gut is like a huge aspect of it. It's really, a lot of times it responds to food and food types and certain specific foods. And you can go even further on certain foods, like you said, are GMO or sprayed with glyphosate, which could that be part of this big puzzle, that we're always noticing? And that increases a crazy amount of inflammation, leaky gut, causing this kind of constant systemic inflammation that creates this heightened immunity because your body's police is like, what's happening, what's going on. That's kind of how I picture it in my mind. So I would love to get your take on all of that.
Absolutely. So kind of research is very clear. Any autoimmune process, they know that you have to have genetic susceptibility. So there is one component which is your genes. But the second component is the environmental triggers. Basically, whenever your body get exposed to certain kind of environmental triggers, that is the reason people get autoimmune conditions. Now, obviously, we are still searching for the complete list of environmental triggers that is present, in our environment. But currently, for Hashimoto's disease, I have figured out 5 major root causes for them. So first of them is obviously the food sensitivity. How we discussed that, like food can be good, but more and more people are developing sensitivity to different foods, especially gluten, dairy. We discussed soy, all those foods, a lot of people are developing kind of, sometimes towards corn, sometimes towards sugar, sometimes towards processed food and processed meats, all those things. So a lot of people do develop sensitivities for various reasons. They can be GMO, they can be sprayed, like all that stuff, right? So that's one
Right.
thing. The second thing is nutritional deficiency. What research has shown is that the same food, like 20 years ago, had more nutritional content into it as compared to the food that we are eating right now. So even though we might be eating the healthiest, our body is not getting the same nutrients profile that we used to get. And that again kind of triggers autoimmunity because body needs vitamins and minerals to function. So
Right.
that's the second reason. The third reason is stress. That's where like the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, any kind of stress our body gets exposed to over the course of long periods. Then again, that again triggers Hashimoto's
And
disease.
that could be also over exercise.
Absolutely, yes. Like we are in this age where everybody is doing these hit trainings, like high intensity interval trainings, orange theories, and all those things, which can be good, but for some people that can be just too much. And we know that actually there was a research study done, in marathon runners. So in marathon runners, before they started the marathon, they took their blood work and they checked their inflammatory markers called HSCRP. And then after they completed the marathon, the same time they actually collected the blood again and checked those inflammatory markers, and they were on the higher side. So just running the marathon, caused their inflammation markers to go high because that is a kind of an extreme exercise. I'm not saying marathon or running is bad, but I'm just saying that just again, if we keep doing those things each and every day, again and again and again, then those
Right.
levels never go down because your body goes through those inflammatory products and they come down and you are fine with it. That's what
Right.
happens in marathon runners. Probably if you check it in a day or two, they'll be fine. But just imagine like if you're hitting your body with those high intensity trainings and things, over exercising, it can certainly do it.
Yeah.
So the stress component. Then comes the toxins. How we like talked about various like toxins, whether it's heavy metals like lead, mercury, aluminium, or arsenic, or it is the mold toxins in our environment, especially houses or workplaces. We kind of talk about, or different kind of environmental toxins, glycosides, like or toxins in our cleaning products, toxins that we use on our skin products. All of those things contribute to that. And the last one is infections. There are several infections which can again lead to Hashimoto's, Epstein-Barr being a very common one, which is called infectious mononucleosis. We know reactivation of Epstein-Barr can cause it. Different kinds of parasites in the gut can again lead to Hashimoto's disease. Candida can lead to Hashimoto's disease. Then there are other infections like chronic Lyme or other chronic infections can do that. So this is like a big kind of, overview of all these different root causes that we know right now, actually, that they do cause it. There might be more, but at least we know that these all cause them. Now, the interesting part is that Again, not everyone will have the same root cause. Different people will have different root causes that will be playing a role. And again, I
Right.
want to use the word root causes and not cause. Because again, people are very used to just having one cause. Tell me that one cause which caused my disease. Hashimoto's is very different. It doesn't happen just because of one cause, it happens because of at least two plus root causes. So people have at least two plus root causes that come together and lead to Hashimoto's disease. And unless we identify all the root causes and work on all of them, people do not get better. So that's the reason it's first important to identify all the root causes and then start working stepwise manner to address all of them.
Yeah, it's so interesting. But I love how you broke that down in such a beautiful, clear picture. Because it's like, okay, this is all the things that I've heard from pieces from many different people, but to actually have it all laid out that way really brings a lot of clarity. And I know also something else, and I was wondering what you've noticed. Have you noticed a PCOS component or link or tendency with Hashimoto's?
Absolutely. Again, research is very clear. We have several research studies suggesting that, Hashimoto's clients have very high prevalence of PCOS, and opposite also that PCOS again comes at a higher chance of having Hashimoto's disease. Because what people have to understand is that all our hormones are connected. The way it is understand is that, like how, like, there is an orchestra or a symphony which is playing, right? And the symphony to kind of sound good, all the instruments in that symphony needs to do their job. If one instrument is not doing its job, the whole symphony doesn't sound good. The same thing with our hormonal system. All the hormonal systems are connected with each other. If we have a problem at one place, it is going to affect the other places also. So in Hashimoto's disease, we see that, like the thyroid hormone is very important for estrogen, like, receptors, and also kind of, for progesterone also. And whenever there is like low thyroid issues, or whether there is too much inflammation in Hashimoto's disease, that actually impacts the female ovarian follicles also, and do not let them ovulate. And that is a very major problem that happens in PCOS issues, that, females are not able to ovulate, and that's the reason they don't get pregnant, and all of the symptoms, starts doing with that. And again, thyroid hormone is very well connected with estrogen hormones too. So in PCOS, again, like because there is imbalance between your estrogen and testosterone levels, that again impacts the thyroid also and actually makes it worse.
Yeah.
Even what people don't know is that, the ovarian follicles have receptors for thyroid hormone too. So thyroid hormone directly also affects, like the growth of the follicles, and also like how it kind of functions over there also.
Another question I have is iodine. So that's always, you hear kind of, for me at least growing up, iodine is great for the thyroid, but I know that when it comes to Hashimoto's, it's a different story.
That is correct. So again, actually the story starts from when we first actually diagnosed or came to know about thyroid disorders. 40, 50 years ago, when actually we first came to know about thyroid disorder, the number one reason at that time was iodine deficiency. So pockets in the world, or pockets in different countries, there were places where there was no iodine available in their local, like, salt, or local, like, food. And those are the people which had like really big goiters, or they had actually thyroid draw. So we thought, well, iodine is a main problem. Let's supplement everybody with iodine. And once we do that, we will basically eradicate the thyroid problems. Well, that was a good thought, and that definitely worked for a lot of people. But we did not see a drop in the thyroid incidence. Actually, the incidence had still been high. The reason being, now the number one reason of thyroid disorders is not iodine deficiency. It is actually Hashimoto's disease. More than 80% of females or people who have hypothyroidism, the reason behind it is Hashimoto's disease. And again, the research is very clear. The iodine deficiency can cause Hashimoto's, but excess amount of iodine can also cause Hashimoto's disease. And most of us, are not iodine deficient because, as I said, we have added iodine into different kinds of food. The major one being salt. Then we have other fortified food, over the shelf food that we eat that does have iodine. So I
Right.
don't. So that's the reason iodine deficiency is not the number one reason of Hashimoto's. Iodine excess can be. And as you said, a
Right.
lot of people are taking very high amount of iodine supplementations because they think that is going to be helpful. Actually, that can be detrimental or harmful for their Hashimoto's.
Right. And I know things like selenium and zinc are supportive. And sometimes, as a matter of fact, I've heard that people who are deficient in selenium can have a tendency or a link to get Hashimoto's.
That is absolutely correct. Yes. Again, like out of one of those supplement, which has the biggest kind of impact is the selenium. So we have several research studies both. Like first of all, is that okay? Well, people who are low in selenium definitely has high incidence of Hashimoto's disease, and plus research suggests that those people once they start taking selenium supplementations, their antibody levels improve very dramatically. And zinc is supportive of selenium because zinc and selenium actually both are needed for proper production of thyroid hormone as well as conversion of the thyroid hormone. So your thyroid gland actually produces the thyroid hormone, which we call an inactive thyroid hormone called T4. It goes into your body, but in cells of your body to utilize a thyroid hormone, it needs to be converted to the active version called the T3. And like the part of those enzymes need selenium and zinc to work properly. So that's the reason selenium and zinc combined together have shown very much beneficial for Hashimoto's disease, and they can definitely lower antibody levels and even support your thyroid function and also improve thyroid numbers.
Interesting. And I guess that goes back to that nutrient deficiency that you were talking about, which I thought about too, is if you have food sensitivities, that's also going to impact nutritional deficiency because even if you are getting the nutrients, you're not going to be able to absorb them correctly. And also, is there any link with vitamin D deficiency?
Yes. Vitamin D, I just always forget talking about it because I just feel like, we have talked about it so much and almost everybody is taking it that it is just given that everybody knows about it. But you're absolutely correct. We have actually more than like 20 papers, which connect vitamin D with different kinds of thyroid disorders, whether hypothyroid, whether Hashimoto's, even hyperthyroid disease and Graves disease, the vitamin D impacts to it. So vitamin D is one of those, like we don't even call it vitamin, we just basically call it a hormone now because
Right.
it has multitude of function in our body. Initially, we thought it was only good for bones, but now we know it is good for immunity, it is good for inflammation, it regulates your immune system to identify which is your friend and which is your enemy. Like so very important aspects of things, obviously good for brain health, good for your hormonal health, good for your female reproductive health. Vitamin D is one of those things which definitely is so much important, and the problem is that most of us are low in vitamin D, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people think, well, I kind of go outside, and take a walk. Well, that is just not enough. When you're going outside, you're clothed from head to toe, so the skin exposure is very little. And depending on where you are in the country, the sun, like might not be able to make that vitamin D through your skin absorption. And it's an easy test. Most of the labs can do it. So I always tell people, why not just check your vitamin D levels? And if it is low, you have an answer that what you're doing currently is not enough to keep your levels up. And for that, you definitely need supplementation to keep those vitamin D levels up in the normal range.
And for fertility, a lot of people say 50s, even something, because it's almost like the TSH. You want it under 2. And for people who are not trying to conceive, you can you have a little more wiggle room. But when it comes to fertility specifically, you do want it at a high level. Another thing with D is it's interesting because I live in Florida, and as much as we have the sun, we have such a huge amount of people deficient in D here as well. And I part of it I think is also magnesium deficiency. Just like you were saying with zinc and selenium, how they work together. I know that if you're deficient in magnesium, magnesium helps you process vitamin D in your body.
Absolutely. Yes. Magnesium is another one of those minerals which doesn't get, like the same attention that other things should get, like vitamin D or vitamin B12 and things. It's an amazing thing. More than 300 enzymes in your body needs magnesium to function. And again, that research study which I'm talking about specifically tells us about selenium, zinc, and magnesium, which are low in our food. So most of us are low in magnesium. The problem in magnesium is that, even though magnesium might be present in adequate amount in the food, we just do not absorb it properly from the food that we eat. So most of us are like just walking around with low magnesium levels, and you're absolutely correct that magnesium impacts so many other vitamins, how they are processed, how they are absorbed, and how your body assimilates them. That's where that 300 enzymes comes into place, because each and everything that is happening in our body needs a particular enzyme to kind of break it down and process it and absorb it. And that's where magnesium is very important. So, and the problem is that we don't have a perfect test to check for magnesium deficiency.
Yeah.
The regular blood test, is there, is always normal, that I've always seen. But, that is not the most accurate test to check for magnesium. So that's the reason those advanced functional medicine tests, because they're checking magnesium in the plasma levels or RBC levels, they give us a better idea about it. And the better part about it is that there is no toxicity of magnesium. So even though you're taking a magnesium supplementations, you're not going to hurt your body, because literally we have used very, very high doses of magnesium in ER setting for various diseases, like, in sometimes asthma attacks, we use magnesium. Females who are pregnant and they are having, like, high blood pressure, which we call as eclampsia or preeclampsia, we use my IV magnesium for that. So we've used high dose of magnesium. It doesn't hurt our body. So I'll say, well, I think magnesium is definitely great, because it can help not only your vitamin D levels, but also other things also in your body.
And also Brazil nuts, I know that are really good for selenium, but they do say you shouldn't have, like, unlike magnesium with Brazil nuts, you should cap it at a certain amount because you can overdo it. It really is very high in selenium. What are your thoughts on, first of all, using that as almost a way to nourish yourself with selenium rather than pills?
So the problem is that, yes, Brazil nut definitely could be high. What we have seen is that, like different varieties of Brazil nuts and the way they are grown actually matters a lot in the selenium content. So the selenium content can vary anywhere from 40 micrograms to around 90 micrograms in a single Brazil nut. And generally, like if you have Hashimoto's, the recommended dose which has been studied is around 100 micrograms to 200 micrograms. So the problem is that if you're taking too much, you're correct. The people who are taking like 400 or 500 micrograms of selenium, they can get toxic on selenium. So that is not one of those vitamins or minerals like magnesium, which your
Right.
body cannot get toxic. Selenium, you can get toxic. Now, if you're taking, let's say, two Brazil nuts, but the Brazil nuts that you are getting only have 30 micrograms of selenium, that you're not getting enough. While if you have those Brazil nuts which are 90, then yes, you are getting enough. So how would you know that which Brazil nut
That's
has how
right.
much?
It's
So
true.
for general thyroid health, I think it makes sense to just use maybe one or two Brazil nut, a day. But once you have Hashimoto's and you want to improve it, that's where we want more precision. I want to make sure that a person is getting enough of that, selenium in their body. So we are getting, like doing a controlled experiment and not just kind of relying on that food that we are getting.
Yeah, yeah, totally get it. And what are your thoughts on taking desiccated thyroid?
So desiccated thyroid is good. Again, it depends on person of how high of a level of thyroid medicine dosage they are on. So again, just to going back to for people to understand, like what is desiccated thyroid and what is the thyroid difference within that. So most people are taking the synthetic version of thyroid medicine, which is the levothyroxine, which is also called synthroid. That's
Right.
basically like made in a lab, and you're getting it. It is only T4 hormone, like how I explained to you. That is the inactive thyroid hormone. Then there are natural versions of thyroid medicines. A couple of them are Armor, Nature's Thyroid, and then there is desiccated thyroid. Desiccated thyroid is basically you are getting the actual thyroid, which some thyroid hormone from mainly like beef or pork or that area. Now, the thought is that, if you're getting a natural version of things, then we have seen that some research studies, smaller ones, that, that can be beneficial for your antibody levels. That if you're taking desiccated thyroid, that can lower your antibody levels. Plus, this desiccated thyroid will have both T4 and T3. So again, that gives you an overall a better result with that. The problem is that when you go with higher doses, like, if you're going to like, 100 micrograms or 125 micrograms, then desiccated thyroid, becomes a little bit unreliable of how much thyroid hormone a person gets. So that's the reason, I say, well, if you're going beyond 100 micrograms, then I think desiccated thyroid might not be the best choice, because your thyroid hormone levels can vary a little bit. But you're a
Right.
very low dosage of 25 micrograms or even 50, or, like closer to that, then I think desiccated thyroid is a good option, because that means your thyroid still is functioning and just needs a little bit of a support.
Right. And it all goes down to every person's different and everybody's going to respond differently to different medications. And just for people who have Hashimoto's and want to get the hope, it sounds like you have figured out ways to reverse it or you've seen reversal of Hashimoto's.
Absolutely, yes. We have seen so many different clients that have worked with us. Their thyroid antibodies were so high. They were on thyroid medicines. After working with us, their thyroid antibodies have come back to normal. A lot of them are able to come off the medicines also. So that is definitely a possibility, and they're living their life to the fullest. Their quality of life is great. Lot of ample energy. Their like mental capacity is good. They have lost weight. Their gut is feeling good. In general, the most common comment that we get is that, Dr. Gupta, I think I got my life back.
Oh, that's amazing.
Uh, yeah, so that's kind of, and again, I'd asked people, how do you explain that? And they said, we cannot explain it, but we just feel that we got our life back. And I think that's a biggest compliment for any practitioner, that, like, you're
Yeah.
giving people their life back, because everybody wants to live their life to the fullest. And unfortunately, most of the middle-aged females, have been told that, oh, well, you're not feeling good because, like, you have so many responsibilities, or you're taking care of the kids, or you are a mom, or, taking care of your parents, or, you're working, right? So they get labeled with all of these things, and then ultimately they land up with either psych medications or depression or anxiety, and that's where they're battling with. But in reality, it is just not those things. The reality is that we have not looked at Hashimoto's in a total different lens. By working on all those underlying things, we can definitely improve the quality of life without using any psych medications or any other medications. Now, that being said, it is hard work, like the people have to put in to kind of reverse it. And in some people, just the complete reversal doesn't happen. But almost every client of ours see an improvement in their antibodies, and definitely they get their quality of life back. So that's definitely that we have seen a lot of times.
That's incredible and amazing. And so you are available to work with really internationally? I mean, are you able to do telemedicine?
That's true. Yes. So we have actually, we are one of the kind of pioneers into the virtual medicine world. Even before the COVID hit, we started this virtual practice, and we are able to see clients from not only United States, anywhere in United States, but internationally
Amazing.
also. So we have like at least 20 plus countries that, we have patients that, come to kind of see us virtually. So people can definitely see us, and we can help improve their situations.
That's incredible. I honestly, it's great for me to know because I may be very soon sending you people. And especially this specifically impacts fertility on so many levels. So first of all, how can people find you if they are interested in working with you?
So our website is a great resource. So our website is anshulguptamd.com, which is spelled as ANSHULGUPTA MD.com. We have a very active blog over there, so a lot of people can, who wants to read more research based topics on this, we have, share it almost regularly. And that's where, like, we have these resources of how people can start working with us virtually, what to expect, what not to. So I think that's a great resource. Another great resource who people want to just learn more about Hashimoto's, obviously, is a YouTube channel. So we have a very active YouTube channel. We post regular videos. Again, what people can do now to improve their situations. Our handle is Anshul Gupta MD. So I think that's a great resource. Instagram is also another one that we share regular posts with. And then that's where my book comes into place also. People who wants to understand more. My book is called Reversing Hashimoto's, and again available on Amazon and all the other major platforms, that discusses what is going on with people with Hashimoto's, why they are not feeling good, and my three-step process, what they can do today to kind of improve their disease process and also feel good. So very easy read, but scientifically backed. Because I want
I
to write a
love
book,
that.
yeah, because obviously there are a lot of different books on Hashimoto's, but some of them are so dense in medical terminology. Like a lot of people just are like lost. Okay, what should be doing? So the way this book was written, I wanted to have some like scientific background. So we have at least more than 150 references of research studies, plus at the same time written in a language where people can understand and implement the plan today itself.
Well, I'm sure if they listened to this episode, they felt that from just how clearly you are explaining everything, which I so appreciate. I mean, you really outline it so nicely and clean so that it's very much understandable for the layperson who doesn't understand medicine. And I also like the fact that everything that you're saying is backed with studies. So, I mean, on so many levels, I think today was so informative for so many people. And I really appreciate our conversation, Dr. Gupta. And thank you so much for coming on. And just also, before I go, everything that Dr. Gupta just mentioned is going to be in the episode notes. So all the links, everything that you just mentioned is going to be in the episode notes so people can go ahead and go there to find it. But again, thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely. It is my great pleasure coming over here. But again, I want to actually appreciate and thank you for the efforts that you are putting in educating all the females, getting great speakers and also sharing tons and tons of knowledge, which I think, females need right now because, again, they're looking for answers. So I think your show is such a great resource. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.